The sun was just beginning to rise, painting the sky with soft shades of orange and pink, when Thomas, a quiet and humble man, stepped out of his small cabin nestled at the edge of the forest. The air was fresh, carrying the earthy scent of pine and damp soil. He took a deep breath, feeling the calm of the early morning. Thomas had lived near these woods for many years, and over time he had learned to respect its beauty as well as its dangers. Every morning, he walked the same trail, checking his traps, gathering firewood, or simply enjoying the peaceful sounds of the forest waking up. Thomas was a man of routine, but he was also curious. The forest, with its twisting paths and hidden clearings, never failed to surprise him. He knew the streams and hills like the back of his hand, but he always remained alert. Nature had a way of reminding him that even in familiar surroundings, anything could happen. Birds chirped cheerfully in the treetops, and somewhere in the distance, the faint rustling of a deer moving through the underbrush hinted that life was everywhere. Thomas smiled to himself. This solitude, though quiet, was comforting. It was a place where he could think, work, and feel connected to something larger than himself. That morning, as he walked along a narrow trail that wound between towering oaks and thick undergrowth, Thomas noticed a strange sound. It was soft at first, almost like the wind moving through the trees. But then it grew clearer. He stopped and listened intently. It was not the sound of animals moving through the forest. It was something else, something human. Faint, high-pitched cries carried on the cool morning air. His heart quickened. They were the cries of children. Thomas had always been quick to help those in need, and he knew that anyone calling out in such fear must be in trouble. He moved carefully, keeping low among the trees so as not to startle whatever he might find. The cries became louder and more desperate, echoing between the trunks of the trees. Thomas's mind raced. He thought of the stories he had heard from the Apache village nearby. Children wandering too far, wild animals lurking in the forest. The cries were too urgent to ignore. He quickened his pace, his boots crunching softly over fallen leaves and pine needles, his eyes scanning the shadows ahead. Finally, he came to a small clearing and froze. 2 young girls were there, their faces pale with fear, their small bodies trembling. Around them, a pack of wolves circled, their low growls sending shivers down Thomas's spine. The wolves were large, their fur dark and glossy, their eyes sharp and alert. They moved slowly, almost deliberately, keeping the girls trapped in the center of the clearing. The girls clung to each other, too terrified to move, their tiny hands grasping one another for comfort. Thomas felt a surge of fear, but he also felt a stronger surge of determination. He could not let these girls be harmed. He knew he had to act quickly but carefully. Running into the clearing recklessly would only put the girls in more danger. He looked around for anything he could use. A thick branch lay nearby, and he picked it up, holding it tightly in his hands. He took a deep breath, calming himself, and then stepped into the open. The wolves stopped circling for a moment, sensing something different. Thomas raised the branch, waving it to make himself appear larger and more threatening. "Go away!" he shouted, his voice echoing across the clearing. The girls looked at him with wide eyes, unsure if this new person was friend or foe. Thomas knew that he had to distract the wolves to give the girls a chance to escape. He began to throw small stones in their direction, but not to hit them, just to draw their attention. The wolves hesitated, growling and snapping their jaws, unsure of this bold human who dared to challenge them. Thomas's heart pounded in his chest, but he did not falter. He remembered all the stories his father had told him about surviving in the wild, about how courage and quick thinking could save lives. He spoke loudly and firmly, continuing to wave the branch, making himself seem even more imposing. The wolves seemed uncertain now, stepping back slightly, their ears twitching. Thomas slowly advanced toward the girls, keeping the wolves' attention on himself. "Come on," he called softly, trying not to frighten them further. "Follow me, quickly, but stay close to me." The girls hesitated for a moment, fear still gripping them, but seeing his determined expression gave them a glimmer of hope. They took his hand, small and fragile in his strong grip, and he led them toward the edge of the clearing. The wolves growled but did not attack, their curiosity and caution keeping them at bay. Thomas moved steadily, never taking his eyes off the wolves, guiding the girls through the trees. The girls clung to each other and to him, their small feet stumbling over roots and rocks. He spoke to them gently, trying to reassure them. "You're safe now. We're going to get out of here," he said, though inside he remained tense, knowing that the wolves could strike if they sensed weakness. Step by step they moved, and slowly the distance between them and the wolves grew. The girls began to relax slightly, trusting the stranger who had appeared like a guardian in their moment of danger. After what felt like an eternity, they reached a narrow path that led back toward the outskirts of the forest. The wolves had not followed, but Thomas knew better than to assume they were gone for good. He kept moving, keeping the girls close and calm. Their small voices whispered thanks, and he smiled gently at them, encouraging them to keep going. His mind was focused entirely on their safety, on ensuring that they would reach their home without incident. Every step was careful, every sound from the forest scrutinized, until finally the trees began to thin and the faint signs of the village appeared in the distance. As they emerged from the forest, the girls' expressions shifted from fear to relief. They could see familiar paths, the smoke rising from small fires and the distant outlines of their homes. Thomas felt a wave of exhaustion wash over him, but also a profound sense of satisfaction. He had risked himself to save these innocent lives, and that was reward enough for him. Still, he did not let his guard down. He guided them safely to the edge of the village, where familiar voices began to call out, worried and anxious. The girls ran forward, their cries of relief echoing as their families rushed to meet them. Thomas watched silently, feeling a warmth in his chest. The forest, once again, seemed peaceful, but he knew the memory of this morning would stay with him forever. He had faced danger, and he had acted not out of desire for reward, but out of a simple sense of duty and compassion. As he turned to leave, the girl's eyes followed him, wide with admiration and gratitude. He nodded to them, a quiet acknowledgement of the bond formed in the forest that day. The sun had climbed higher now, warming the earth, and Thomas walked back along the trail he knew so well, his heart light, ready for whatever the next day might bring. Thomas had barely stepped away from the edge of the forest when a sudden, urgent thought struck him. He couldn't simply leave the girls with the memory of that terrifying moment. They needed reassurance, guidance, and above all, safety. Turning back, he made his way toward the clearing where he had first encountered the wolves, checking to ensure there was no lingering threat. The forest seemed quiet now, almost peaceful, but Thomas knew better than to trust appearances completely. Wild animals often lurked unseen, and danger could return in a heartbeat. The two girls, whose names he had just learned were Lila and Naya, clung to each other nervously. They had begun to take slow, hesitant steps, but the fear in their eyes still shone brightly. Thomas knelt down to their level and spoke softly. "You're safe now. I won't let anything hurt you. We just need to keep moving together." His calm voice seemed to have a magical effect. The girls relaxed slightly, though their small hands remained tightly clasped in his. Even in his humble confidence, Thomas felt a pang of worry. He knew that they had to reach the village quickly, but the path was long, uneven, and full of hidden risks. As they began to move along a narrow forest path, Thomas noticed small signs that the wolves might not be far behind. Broken branches, faint paw prints in the dirt, and the occasional rustle in the bushes reminded him that the wild was unpredictable. He maintained a steady pace, careful not to tire the girls, while remaining alert to every sound and movement around them. He whispered instructions to Lila and Naya, teaching them to step lightly, stay close, and avoid startling any wildlife. They nodded, following his guidance, their trust in him growing with every careful step. Thomas's thoughts drifted for a moment to the Apache village beyond the forest. He remembered meeting their people before, sharing small exchanges of food, stories, and smiles. He had always admired their deep connection to nature, their resilience, and the kindness that ran through their community. Now, walking through the woods with two of their children, he felt an even stronger sense of responsibility. He wasn't just guiding two girls back to safety. He was carrying a piece of that community's trust on his shoulders. That realization added weight to each step, but it also strengthened his resolve. The forest seemed endless as they progressed. Tall trees blocked much of the sunlight, casting long shadows across the uneven ground. Roots twisted across the path like natural traps, and the occasional thorn bush jutted into the trail, threatening to catch clothes or scrape skin. Thomas moved slowly, making sure Lila and Naya avoided each obstacle. At one point, a fallen log blocked their path, and Thomas carefully lifted one girl over it before helping the other, ensuring neither stumbled or panicked. Despite the small comforts he offered, the girls' fear never fully left their eyes. Thomas knew that even when physical danger had passed, the memory of it lingered like a shadow. Suddenly, the quiet was interrupted by the faint sound of another creature moving nearby. Thomas froze, listening intently. The girls pressed close to him, their small faces pressed against his sides. From the bushes emerged a lone wolf, smaller than the ones before, but still alert and watchful. Thomas knew he had to act quickly. He stepped forward, positioning himself between the girls and the wolf, raising his arms to make himself appear larger. He spoke in a calm, firm voice. "Go back to the forest. You won't find anything here." The wolf hesitated, growling low in its throat, unsure of the human in front of it. Thomas slowly reached for a sturdy branch lying nearby. He didn't intend to hurt the animal, only to ensure it understood that he meant business. With a quick motion, he tapped the ground, creating a loud sound. The wolf yipped and darted back into the trees, disappearing almost immediately. The girls breathed out a sigh of relief, their tension visibly easing. Thomas smiled gently, patting their small shoulders. "See? Nothing will hurt you as long as we stick together," he said. The girls nodded, their trust in him growing stronger by the minute. As they continued on the trail, Thomas engaged the girls in quiet conversation to distract them from fear. "Do you like walking in the forest?" he asked gently. Lila shook her head, whispering, "I was scared." Naya nodded in agreement, her voice trembling slightly. Thomas chuckled softly, understanding completely. "I know. But sometimes, even when we're scared, we have to be brave. Bravery doesn't mean not being afraid, it means facing fear when it matters most." The girls listened, absorbing his words like small seeds of courage. His gentle guidance helped them regain a sense of control, even in the aftermath of such terror. After walking for several minutes, they reached a small stream, its water sparkling in the sunlight that filtered through the canopy. Thomas knelt and drank some water, offering the girls a sip in turn. The cold water refreshed them and lifted their spirits. He encouraged them to rest briefly on the bank, warning them not to wander. The girls sat quietly, dipping their fingers into the cool water, watching as tiny fish darted beneath the surface. Thomas's presence was steady and reassuring, reminding them that danger had passed for now. But Thomas also knew that their journey was far from over. The Apache village lay several miles beyond the forest, and the path was not easy. They would have to navigate hills, uneven ground, and possibly more wildlife before reaching safety. He stood, offering a hand to each girl, and together they continued. Each step brought them closer to the village, yet each step required focus and care. Thomas constantly scanned the surroundings, listening for unusual sounds, scanning the underbrush, and ensuring that nothing went unnoticed. His mind worked tirelessly to anticipate every possible risk, all while maintaining the calm and reassurance the girls needed. Along the way, Lila and Naya began to ask small questions, their voices tentative but curious. "Are the wolves gone?" Naya asked. Thomas smiled. "Yes, they've gone back to the forest. We're safe now. You can trust me." Their trust was not built instantly, but in small steps, it grew steadily with each action Thomas took. He guided them over a series of rocks, through patches of tall grass, and past fallen branches, all the while keeping them close and speaking in calm, comforting tones. By the time the village began to come into view, the girls' fear had softened into cautious relief. As the sun climbed higher, casting golden light across the clearing that marked the edge of the forest, Thomas could see smoke rising from the small homes of the Apache village. Their people were beginning their day, unaware of the ordeal that had unfolded just beyond the trees. The girls, sensing the familiarity of home, began to move a little faster, their small hands still clinging to Thomas's. He allowed himself a quiet smile. They were almost there. All that remained was to guide them safely to their families. Finally, they reached the first edge of the village. Thomas slowed, letting the girls see the familiar sights: women carrying baskets, men working on tasks, children playing. Their faces lit up with recognition, and their small feet carried them faster toward safety. Villagers noticed the girls running, and a few voices called out in concern. Lila and Naya ran to their mother, who rushed forward, worry etched across her face. Thomas stepped back, allowing the family to reunite, his heart swelling with quiet satisfaction. The girls hugged their mother tightly, their cries of relief mixing with soft sobs. Thomas stood silently, watching the reunion, knowing he had done what was right. The morning sun bathed the scene in warm light as the mother thanked him repeatedly, tears of gratitude in her eyes. Thomas shook his head humbly, insisting that he had only done what anyone would do in such a situation. Yet inside, he felt a deep sense of fulfillment. Courage, he realized, was not about seeking recognition or reward. It was about acting with heart, protecting those who could not protect themselves, and facing fear with determination. As he turned to leave the village, the girls waved at him, their eyes shining with newfound admiration. Thomas walked away quietly, the forest behind him now calm, carrying the satisfaction of knowing he had made a real difference that day. The village came into full view now, a cluster of small homes with smoke rising gently from chimneys and children running freely through open spaces. Thomas's heart felt lighter, but he did not let his guard down. He knew that even though the immediate danger of the forest had passed, the journey back to complete safety was not yet over. Lila and Naya, still holding tightly to his hands, seemed to sense this as well. Their steps were hesitant, but with Thomas guiding them, they moved steadily toward the village's center. The sun shone brightly, casting long shadows from the wooden homes and highlighting the warm, earthy colors of the village. As they walked, Thomas noticed villagers starting to gather, curious about the commotion. Some were returning from their morning work, carrying baskets of vegetables or tending to small animals. Others were simply stepping out of their homes to enjoy the morning. At first, people seemed puzzled to see him accompanied by two frightened little girls, but the tension in their faces quickly became apparent as they realized something serious must have happened. Thomas felt a wave of responsibility wash over him. He had to ensure that the girls' story was clearly understood, that their safety was guaranteed, and that the villagers trusted him. The girls' pace quickened slightly when they recognized familiar faces. Their mother, who had been out gathering herbs near the edge of the village, spotted them and immediately ran toward them, her expression shifting from concern to relief in a heartbeat. Thomas allowed them to move ahead, staying close but keeping a respectful distance so the mother could reach her children first. The girls ran into her arms, sobbing softly, and she hugged them tightly, her voice trembling as she asked them what had happened. Lila and Naya clung to her, their eyes wide with lingering fear, and then, slowly, they pointed toward Thomas. "He saved us," Naya whispered. The mother turned to Thomas, her eyes welling up with tears, and for a moment, words failed her. She took a deep breath, trying to steady herself, and then she spoke, her voice both relieved and grateful. You saved my daughters?" she asked. Thomas nodded quietly, a humble smile forming on his face. "Yes," he said simply. "They were in danger, and I couldn't leave them there. I just did what I thought was right." The mother's hands shook slightly as she reached out to touch his arm, and he gently stepped back, letting her express her gratitude without hesitation. The villagers, now fully aware of what had transpired, began to gather closer. Their murmurs carried a mix of curiosity, admiration, and awe. Thomas realized that his quiet act of bravery had not only saved 2 innocent lives, but had also brought a moment of unity and appreciation to the community. Children peeked from behind walls and doors, their eyes wide as they tried to understand what had happened in the forest. Older villagers exchanged knowing glances, silently acknowledging the courage required to face wild animals and protect the helpless. Thomas felt a mixture of humility and pride. He had acted without thought of recognition. Yet the respect he was receiving was undeniable. The mother finally turned back to her daughters, her voice filled with tenderness. She gently asked them to recount what had happened, and the girls, with Thomas standing nearby, told the story as best as they could. "Wolves! We were so scared. He came and helped us," Lila said, her voice quivering but clear. Thomas listened quietly, nodding at the right moments, letting the girls' voices carry the story to the villagers. Their bravery in the face of fear was evident, but so was Thomas's. As the story spread, the villagers' admiration for him grew, and some whispered that he was a man of extraordinary courage, a protector not just of strangers but of anyone in need. Thomas knew, however, that this recognition, while humbling, was not the reason he had acted. He had saved the girls because it was the right thing to do, because no one should face danger alone when someone could help. Still, he felt a warmth in his chest, knowing that his actions had made a lasting impression. The girl's mother stepped forward, holding their hands firmly, and spoke with a voice that resonated with gratitude and sincerity. "You have given us a gift we can never repay," she said. "You have risked yourself for our children. How can we ever thank you?" Thomas shook his head again, refusing to accept any material reward. "Seeing them safe is thanks enough," he said softly, his eyes meeting hers. The mother smiled, though tears still shimmered in her eyes. She reached into a small bag she carried and pulled out a few simple items: a carefully woven bracelet, a small charm made of wood, and a handmade cloth. "These are humble gifts," she said, "but they are given with all our hearts. Please accept them as a symbol of our gratitude." Thomas's eyes widened slightly, not at the material value of the gifts, but at the thought and care behind them. He accepted them with quiet humility, understanding that their significance was far greater than their size or cost. The gesture represented respect, trust, and a bond that had been forged through courage and kindness. While the mother spoke, Thomas took a moment to look around at the village itself. Life here was simple but full of meaning. The people worked together, shared responsibilities, and looked out for one another. He realized that his act of bravery had not only saved 2 children, but had also strengthened the ties of this community. The villagers now saw him not just as a stranger passing through, but as someone who could be trusted and relied upon. It was a moment of mutual understanding, of shared respect between a man who valued life and a people who valued honor and family. After the initial relief had passed, the mother invited Thomas to her home. Inside, the atmosphere was warm and inviting. The aroma of cooked food filled the air, and the walls were adorned with simple, meaningful decorations. The girls, now more relaxed, sat close to their mother, occasionally glancing at Thomas with shy gratitude. He felt honored by their trust and treated it with care, speaking softly and moving gently to avoid startling them. The mother offered him a seat and some food, insisting that he must be hungry after the long morning. Thomas accepted, appreciating the kindness but also feeling deeply moved by the sincerity of their hospitality. As they shared a simple meal, the conversation turned to the forest, the wolves, and the dangers that had been narrowly avoided. Thomas described the encounter with care, emphasizing the girl's bravery as much as his own actions. The mother listened intently, nodding with understanding, her hands gently resting on her daughter's shoulders. The girls, meanwhile, were beginning to regain their usual playful demeanor, occasionally laughing softly as they recounted parts of the story in their innocent, imaginative way. Thomas smiled quietly, enjoying the moment, knowing that this day would become a story they could remember together for years to come. The afternoon sun began to cast long shadows, signaling that the day was moving on. Thomas realized it was time to leave, but the mother insisted on walking him to the edge of the village. The girls held his hands again, this time not out of fear, but as a gesture of friendship and trust. Villagers gathered quietly to watch, their eyes filled with admiration and respect. Thomas walked alongside the mother and daughters, feeling a deep sense of fulfillment. He had faced fear, acted bravely, and in return had been welcomed into a community that valued honor, gratitude, and family above all else. Finally, they reached the edge of the village. Thomas paused, kneeling slightly to meet the girls at eye level. "Remember," he said gently, "courage doesn't mean never being scared. It means helping each other when it matters most." Lila and Naya nodded seriously, their eyes reflecting understanding and trust. Their mother thanked him once more, her voice steady despite the tears that lingered. Thomas smiled, waved quietly, and began his walk back toward the forest, feeling lighter in spirit yet profoundly aware of the bond he had formed with these people in such a short time. As he moved away, the sounds of the village faded behind him, replaced once again by the quiet of the forest. Yet now, the forest seemed different, less threatening, more familiar, and more alive. Thomas reflected on the morning's events, realizing that bravery, kindness, and compassion had the power to create connections that transcended fear and danger. The memory of the girls' relief, their mother's gratitude, and the community's respect would stay with him forever. He walked onward, the sun warm on his back, knowing that some actions, though small in scale, could leave an impact far greater than one could imagine. The sun had climbed high into the sky, warming the village and casting a golden glow over the wooden homes. Thomas stood quietly at the edge, watching as Lila and Naya ran back to play with other children, their laughter filling the air. Their mother, still holding a small hand-woven cloth close to her chest, walked over to Thomas. Her expression was soft, filled with gratitude, but also with a seriousness that made him curious. She motioned for him to follow her toward her home. Though he had already spent time there earlier, he sensed that something important was about to happen. Once inside, the mother gestured for him to sit. The girls busied themselves with small chores around the home, glancing occasionally at Thomas with shy smiles. The mother spoke first, her voice calm but deliberate. "You risked your life for my daughters," she said. "Most people would have turned away. Most people would have been afraid. But you did not. You acted bravely and with a pure heart." Thomas shook his head modestly. "I did what I had to do. I couldn't leave them alone. Anyone would have done the same," he replied, though he felt the weight of her gratitude keenly. The mother leaned forward slightly, her hands clasped in front of her. "In our culture," she began, "acts of bravery and kindness are not forgotten. They are remembered and honored, not just by words, but by actions. I wish to give you something, a token, a way to show my thanks that you cannot refuse." Thomas's curiosity piqued. He had already received small gifts earlier. But there was a seriousness in her tone that suggested this was something different, something meaningful. From a small chest in the corner of her home, she pulled out an object carefully wrapped in soft cloth. She unwrapped it slowly, revealing a finely crafted necklace made from delicate wooden beads and small stones, each etched with tiny symbols. "This was made by my ancestors," she explained. "It is given to those who have shown courage, kindness, and selflessness. It is a symbol of trust, respect, and connection. You may wear it, and it will remind you always of this day, of the children you saved, and of the bond you have formed with our family and our people." Thomas's eyes widened slightly. He was deeply moved. This was not simply a gift. It was a sacred acknowledgement of his actions. A sign that the community honored his bravery in a way words could not fully express. He accepted the necklace with both hands, feeling the weight of it and the significance behind it. "I am honored," he said softly. "I never expected anything like this." The mother smiled, understanding exactly what he meant. "You should not," she said. "Your actions were not done for reward. That is why you are worthy. And because of this, you have earned a place in our hearts and memories." Thomas looked at Lila and Naya, who had come closer now, their small faces filled with admiration and gratitude. He realized that this moment was not only about recognition, but about connection. A reminder that even in the vastness of the world, courage and kindness create bonds that endure. The mother continued, explaining the meaning behind each symbol on the necklace. Some represented protection, others courage, and some represented community and family. As Thomas listened, he felt a deep sense of belonging. Though he was an outsider, he had been welcomed and accepted in a way that transcended mere words or gestures. The necklace was more than an ornament. It was a story, a history, and a symbol of trust that would remain with him for the rest of his life. He held it carefully, understanding that it carried not only the gratitude of a family, but the respect of a culture that valued honor above all else. The girls watched quietly as their mother spoke, their eyes shining with admiration. Lila shyly stepped forward, holding out a small, hand-painted stone she had hidden behind her back. "For you," she said softly. "To remember us." Naya followed with a small bundle of wildflowers she had picked from the forest. Thomas accepted these simple gifts with a gentle smile, touched by the thoughtfulness and innocence behind them. He realized that gratitude could take many forms, not all grand or formal. Sometimes the smallest gestures carried the deepest meaning. After a few moments of quiet reflection, the mother suggested they walk outside together. The village had calmed now, with children playing and villagers returning to their daily tasks. She guided Thomas to a small hill overlooking the forest. From this vantage point, the forest stretched endlessly, green and alive, the same place where danger had threatened only hours before. The mother gestured toward the woods. "This place," she said, "can be both beautiful and dangerous. Today, you faced it with courage and care. That is something rare. That is why this day, this moment, will be remembered by all of us." Thomas felt a surge of humility. He had acted instinctively without thought of reward, yet the recognition he received now was profound and deeply meaningful. The mother then invited Thomas to stay for the evening, but he politely declined. He had responsibilities back at his cabin, and though he felt warmly welcomed, he also valued his solitude and routine. Still, the gesture itself reinforced the bond that had been formed between him and the family. He understood that his act of bravery had created not just gratitude, but trust, and trust was a gift that could never be measured in material terms. He promised to visit again soon, and the mother nodded, understanding the balance between hospitality and independence. Before he left, she spoke again, her voice gentle but firm. "Remember, bravery is not measured by the absence of fear, but by what you do despite it. You have given us a gift we will never forget, and the memory of your courage will remain with our children, our family, and our people." Thomas nodded, feeling the weight of her words. He knew that the day had changed more than just the immediate circumstances. It had left a lasting impression, one that would ripple through the family and perhaps even the village for years to come. As he walked back along the path leading to his cabin, the necklace resting lightly against his chest, Thomas reflected on the events of the day. He thought of the girls' terrified faces, the cautious but determined steps he had taken to protect them, and the profound gratitude expressed by their mother. Each memory reinforced a simple truth: courage and kindness, when exercised selflessly, had a power that went beyond immediate results. They created bonds, trust, and respect that endured, often in ways one could never predict. The forest seemed quieter now, less ominous than before, as if it recognized that today had been a day of courage and humanity. Birds chirped, leaves rustled softly in the breeze, and the sunlight danced across the trail. Thomas walked with a sense of calm, carrying not only the physical weight of the necklace, but the deeper understanding of what it represented. The day had begun like any other, with a routine walk through the forest, but it had ended in a moment that would forever connect him to two young girls, their family, and a community that valued honor and courage above all else. That evening, as Thomas sat outside his cabin, he reflected on what had transpired. The girls' laughter, their mother's words, and the warmth of the village hospitality filled his mind. He realized that while the necklace was a meaningful symbol, the true reward had been the experience itself, the chance to make a difference, to protect innocent lives, and to witness firsthand the power of trust and gratitude. He placed the necklace carefully on a small hook by the doorway, knowing it would serve as a daily reminder of the courage he had found within himself and the kindness he had been shown in return. As night fell, the forest grew quiet, and Thomas felt a deep sense of peace. He knew that the memory of today would remain with him forever, a story of bravery, connection, and selflessness. He thought of Lila and Naya sleeping safely in their beds, their mother watching over them with a heart full of gratitude. He understood that this day, though begun as any other, had become extraordinary. It was a reminder that true courage was not always celebrated loudly, but it was recognized and honored in ways that transcended words. The next morning, the sun rose softly over the village, casting long golden rays across the wooden homes and fields. Thomas awoke in his small cabin, feeling a quiet sense of anticipation. The events of the previous day still lingered in his mind. The memory of the forest, the frightened faces of Lila and Naya, and the gratitude of their mother. He had acted without thought of reward, simply because it was the right thing to do, but he could not help but wonder what the morning might bring. There was a sense in the air, a feeling that something special was about to unfold. After completing his early morning chores, Thomas decided to take a walk toward the village once again. The forest path seemed familiar now, less intimidating and almost welcoming. Birds chirped in the trees, Small animals rustled in the underbrush, and the sun filtered through the leaves, creating patterns of light on the ground. He thought of the necklace the mother had given him the day before, a symbol of bravery and trust. It rested lightly against his chest, a reminder of the connection he now shared with the family and the community. Thomas smiled softly to himself, thinking that true courage often brought rewards far greater than one could imagine. As he approached the edge of the village, he noticed movement near the mother's home. Lila and Naya were outside, playing quietly under the watchful eyes of a few villagers. The mother noticed him and stepped forward, holding something small and carefully wrapped in cloth. Her expression was warm, but there was also a hint of excitement, as if she were about to give Thomas something truly unexpected. He felt a mix of curiosity and humility. He had not come for any reward, yet her expression told him that this was something important, something meaningful. The mother beckoned him closer, speaking in a calm, deliberate voice. "Yesterday you saved my daughter's lives," she said. "What you did was brave, selfless, and honorable. Today, I want to give you something that goes beyond words or symbols. It is a token of gratitude that will always remind you of this day and of the bond we share." Thomas felt a lump in his throat. He had accepted the necklace with humility, but her words now suggested that the gesture would be even more profound. He nodded quietly, his eyes fixed on the small bundle she held. She slowly unwrapped the cloth, revealing a finely crafted wooden box. The wood was polished smooth, with intricate carvings etched along its surface, symbols of protection, courage, and community. Thomas carefully lifted the lid, and inside he found a small, beautifully carved figurine of a mother holding two children. The craftsmanship was delicate, and it radiated warmth and care. "This," the mother explained, "represents my family, the children you protected, and the life you preserved. It is a symbol of your courage, and it carries our thanks, respect, and trust." Thomas's eyes glistened as he lifted the figurine gently. He had never received such a meaningful gift before. The mother continued, her voice steady but filled with emotion. "This is not just a gift. It is a promise that your actions will be remembered, a promise that your courage has made a difference not just for my daughters, but for all of us, and a promise that the bond you have created with our family will endure as long as we live." Thomas felt a warmth spread through his chest. He realized that this reward was far more valuable than anything material. It was a lasting acknowledgement of his bravery and the impact he had on the lives of others. Lila and Naya had come closer now, their eyes wide with curiosity and admiration. They stood silently beside their mother, understanding that this moment was significant. Thomas knelt slightly to meet them at eye level. "I did what anyone would do," he said softly, though he knew that their eyes reflected gratitude and respect beyond words. The girls nodded, their small hands reaching to touch the figurine carefully. "Thank you," Lila whispered. Naya added, "You're our hero." Thomas smiled gently, feeling the truth in their words, though he remained humble. The mother then invited Thomas to sit with her on a nearby bench, the figurine resting carefully between them. She spoke of the importance of bravery, kindness, and selflessness, emphasizing that these qualities were remembered and honored in their culture. Thomas listened attentively, feeling a sense of connection not only to the family, but to the values they upheld. He realized that his actions had created more than gratitude. They had created trust, respect, and a bond that could never be broken. The morning air was filled with quiet reverence, the village bustling gently in the background, yet Thomas felt a deep sense of calm and fulfillment. After a few moments, the mother encouraged him to keep the figurine with him, saying that it would serve as a reminder of the day, the children, and the importance of courage in life. Thomas accepted with a gentle nod, understanding that this gift carried a deeper meaning than anything he could ever have imagined. It was a reminder that bravery was not measured by accolades or wealth, but by the choices one made when faced with fear. The figurine would stay with him always, a symbol of the difference that one person could make through selflessness and care. The girls, now more confident and playful, returned to their games, glancing back at Thomas with smiles that reflected trust and joy. The mother watched them, a soft smile on her face, before turning her attention back to him. "Your courage has changed their lives," she said quietly, "and through them, it has touched all of us. The lesson you have given us is more valuable than anything else. You have shown us that true bravery comes from the heart." Thomas felt a sense of humility and pride intertwined. He had acted instinctively, without expectation, yet the impact of his actions was far-reaching. Before leaving, Thomas spent a few quiet moments in reflection, holding the figurine gently in his hands. He thought about the forest, the wolves, the fear in the girl's eyes, and the determination that had carried him through. He realized that courage was not a single act, but a collection of choices made in moments of need. Each small decision, each step forward despite fear, had led to a day that would never be forgotten. He looked at the mother, who nodded in understanding, and then at the girls, who waved shyly. A sense of peace and fulfillment washed over him. As Thomas began to walk back toward his cabin, the figurine safely tucked in his pack, he reflected on the lessons of the past day. He understood that true bravery was not about seeking recognition or reward, but about acting with integrity and compassion. Yet sometimes life had a way of acknowledging those actions in ways one could never anticipate. The mother's gift, the respect of the villagers, and the smiles of the girls were more than he could have imagined, and he carried them with gratitude and humility. The forest path seemed welcoming now, bathed in the warm light of the morning sun. Thomas felt a renewed sense of purpose, knowing that his courage had made a tangible difference in the lives of others. He thought of Lila and Naya, safe and happy, and of the mother's words about bravery and kindness. The figurine resting in his hands was more than a token. It was a story, a memory, and a symbol of the bond he had created. It reminded him that even the smallest acts of courage could have lasting effects, shaping the lives of others in ways that could never be measured. By the time Thomas reached his cabin, the sun was higher in the sky, illuminating the forest and the village in a warm glow. He placed the figurine on a small shelf by his doorway, a daily reminder of the day that had changed his life as much as it had changed the lives of others. He sat for a moment, reflecting quietly, feeling a sense of fulfillment and peace that came from knowing he had acted rightly. Courage, kindness, and selflessness had not only saved 2 children, but had also created connections that would last a lifetime. As evening approached, Thomas walked to the edge of the forest and looked back at the village. The sounds of life, the laughter of children, the conversations of villagers, and the soft movements of daily work reminded him that his actions had been part of something larger than himself. The figurine in his hand seemed to reflect the light of the setting sun, a symbol of bravery, gratitude, and connection. Thomas understood that true heroism was not measured by fame or wealth, but by the quiet impact one had on the lives of others. The night fell gently, and Thomas returned to his cabin, placing the figurine carefully beside the necklace the mother had given him. He realized that these 2 symbols, though simple in appearance, carried profound meaning. They reminded him of courage in the face of danger, of selflessness, and of the bonds that could form when one acted from the heart. He felt gratitude in return, for the trust of the family, the acknowledgement of the mother, and the lessons the day had taught him about bravery, compassion, and the unexpected rewards of doing the right thing. Thomas knew that he would remember this day forever. The forest, once a place of danger, had become a place of triumph and connection. Lila and Naya, safe and smiling, would grow up knowing the value of courage and trust. The mother's gift, both the necklace and the figurine, would serve as a reminder that true rewards often come in forms we cannot predict, that the simplest acts of bravery can have the deepest impact, and that a single moment of kindness can ripple outward to touch many lives. In that quiet evening, as the stars began to shine above, Thomas felt a peace that only comes from knowing one has truly done what is right.